Long before Leo Bonhart's blade touched their throats, the rats were already walking dead. These kids, struggling to survive under Nilfgaard's brutal rule, were once war's most helpless victims. But in the end, they turned into the saddest kind of villains. Today, we're not talking about heroic tales. We're talking about a fate that was sealed long ago. Let's break down how these kids who thought they were hunters walked straight to their deaths, lost in empty recklessness. The rats' tragedy was written the day they met. Every single one of these 6 kids carried a broken past. War destroyed their homes, and worse, it destroyed their trust in the world. To them, there was no future. Only killing and stealing in the present made them feel alive, even a little. This way of thinking trapped them in a vicious cycle. They'd been hurt, so they decided to be crueler than anyone. The world abandoned them, so they took revenge on everyone they met. They thought this coldness made them strong. But really, it was just the start of their self-destruction. The fake power and running from fate. When Ciri, the girl with elder blood, destined to change the world, joined the rats, this tragedy hit its most ironic point. For Ciri, the rats weren't just a safe place, they were a way to numb her pain. Here, she wasn't the princess of Sintra or a pawn of fate. She was just Falka. She started copying her friend's cruelty, getting pleasure from pointless looting. But this was the rats' deadliest mistake. They refused to face the real world. They ran from all responsibility. They chose petty, mindless cruelty. They raided caravans not to survive, but just to feel powerful over others. This mindless cruelty made them stuck, and they didn't even realize it. The stupidest part? They thought they were untouchable. They wore bright silk clothes, rode stolen horses, and showed off on country roads. They thought this flashy look was rebellion against the world. But really, it was a big target for a real killer. They had no long-term plans, no real strategy. They were like kids dancing on the edge of death, thinking they controlled everything. The rats group fell apart from the inside. There was no real love or loyalty between them, just the fake warmth of desperate people sticking together. They mistook this fake warmth for life. They didn't know it was just the last breath of a dying group. The killer comes, the end of empty chaos. While the rats were drunk on their fake power, fate sent its reckoner. Let's talk about Leo Bonhart. Many see him as just a crazy villain. But if you know the story, you'll realize Bonhart was the deadly hunter the rats brought on themselves. He wasn't some random evil. He was the price they paid for wasting all their luck. The rats had bullied small villages for too long. They thought their street fighting skills made them the best fighters. They laughed at rules, looked down on tradition. They thought messy, random killing meant freedom. But to Bonhart, these kids were just lambs waiting to die wearing fancy rags. Bonhart was the real power, cold skill, and total calm forged from countless life or death fights. The saddest part of this fight, it wasn't even a fair battle. At Elskadeg Manor, the rats ran around like scared birds. Their so-called brotherhood, which they bragged about, broke apart in front of Bonhart's huge sword. Look at the contrast. One side, yelling angry kids with silly moves. The other, a silent, precise killer, as calm as a rock. Bonhart gave them no chance to escape. He killed them as easily as a farmer cuts wheat. Every sword swing was perfect, no wasted moves, every strike deadly. In that moment, the rats finally saw how stupid their empty recklessness was. If you only live for the moment's pleasure, you have to accept dying in that same moment. They pretended to be hunters for months, then got totally crushed in minutes by a real top killer. This wasn't just losing a fight. It was the end of who they were. The rats' chaos met Bonhart's cold order, even if it was a bloody order. Their fancy silk clothes made them easy targets. Their stolen gold became useless funeral decorations. Ciri's change, the cost of empty chaos. The worst thing left after the rats died was Ciri's complete change. Watching her friends, the people she called brothers and sisters, die horribly under Bonhart's feet. Something inside Ciri broke too. This wasn't just losing friends, it was her whole belief falling apart. The rats told her being cruel enough lets you run from fate. But Bonhart taught her the cruelest lesson: fate never lets you run forever. We have to understand why the rat's death was necessary for the whole Witcher story. It's to get rid of that aimless, empty recklessness. If Ciri stayed with the rats, she'd just become another ordinary bandit, killed by a random farmer's crossbow one day. The rat's death was the hard trial that pushed Ciri back to her fate. This is a story about rot. They went from war victims to people who chose cruelty. They thought they were running away, but they were just stuck. The second they stopped running, they started rotting. Did the rats regret their choices right before they died? We'll never know. But one thing's certain, the moment they chose cruelty as protection, their end was already written in silken blood. The 6 dead friends. To feel how sad this massacre was, let's look at the last moments of these 6 kids. People only remember they all died, but forget, each one tried to hold on to their fake pride before the end. Cayley, who loved fancy words and moves, didn't even get to draw his sword before Bonhart. His so-called elegance was just clumsy moves to a real killer. Reeve, who lost all warmth in the war, looked almost relieved when she died. Maybe for her, Bonhart's sword was the end of a long nightmare. Then there were Iskra, Assay, and Missile. Each death was like a colourful bubble popping in the cold wind. They thought sticking together could fight the world. But Bonhart proved a pile of broken people, no matter how many, can never be a fortress. The saddest was Missile, dying right in front of Ciri. In that moment, the rats' last hope broke. They once laughed around fires, talking about robbing the world and being free forever. The truth? They couldn't even leave a decent body. Bonhart didn't bother remembering their names. To him, it was just another clean hunt. 6 more nameless souls added to the 3 Witcher medallions on his chest. After the rats were gone, Ciri went through the darkest pain of her life. Bonhart didn't kill her. Instead, he treated her like a hurt animal, locked her in fighting arenas, made her kill, made her watch her friends' heads rot. This was the cruelest way to break her spirit. Bonhart wanted to destroy the last lie the rats gave her, that she could mess with the world. He made Ciri realize when she chose to be Falka, she'd already killed the part of her that believed in rules and kindness. Now, she was just meat in a cruel world. The rats' fancy lines about living for the moment became the cruelest joke, right next to the sound of chains. Yet this extreme pain, this breaking and remaking of her soul, was what truly woke Ciri up. The rat's death is the most uncomfortable but necessary turning point in The Witcher. It tells us, against the tide of fate, empty recklessness is the weakest kind of self-pity. You can run from fate, but you can't run from the price. As the video ends, I have one question for you. If the rats had chosen to fight back instead of being cruel, would things have ended differently? Or, in that broken world, did they really have no choice but to become monsters? I'm your storyteller, this is Tales of the Continent, and I'll see you next time.